When we click Next, it brings me to step number 3 out of our 5, which is selecting groups for the participant list. Now, this is something that I would cover in a Step 2 training class, because this is assigning teams for competitions and groups for tracking demographics. Now, Alan, this is never a one-time offer with training, and so, of course, we're not going to get through everything Turning Point has to offer, but if you guys ever want to reconvene, talk about some of the additional options, this would be something we would cover. But for our purposes today, we're going to bypass it since it is not a required step and click Next. Step number 4, we want to go ahead and name this participant list, and we want to name it something specific to that class or, something that's going to key us off to when we need to use the list. For instance, if I'm teaching an economics class, I'm going to go ahead and type out economics, and maybe it's a 101. So when I come back in, I know exactly what the list is for that particular class. Now, before I click Finish and show you the final step, let me just go ahead and recap how we got to this point. Step number 1, we selected a template. Step number 2, we selected our list fields, and we kept it with first and last name. Step number 3, we bypassed, and this is adding teams for competitions and groups for demographics. Step number 4, we named our participant list. And finally, we click Finish. It's going to tell me I modified the template. That's because I took out the student ID. It's going to ask me, do I want to save it as a custom template? I do have that option, but for right now, I'm just going to say no. We finally have Step 5. Step number 5 is where I add in the student information into the list. Now, to get more columns and rows to add more students, all I'm doing is clicking the Enter tab on my keyboard. Now, I want you to first of all take a look at how I have 2 columns for first name as well as last name. These columns are in here because I decided this from Step 2, which was my list fields. If I would have kept student ID, I would have also seen an additional column for that. Regardless of what I decide from the list fields, though, in this final step, I'm always going to have a column for device ID. Now, I have a very important decision to make from this step. As the instructor who has access to these cards ahead of time, I can go ahead and pre-assign these cards to each individual by matching up a device ID with the person I want using that card from this step. Now, the other thing I can do here is go ahead and add in all of my students in terms of their first and last name, but keep this device ID column blank, not pre-assign the cards. And as the students come into my room, they can basically pick up any card they want to. But before I begin my presentation, they would register their card to their name through something called the real-time registration tool. We're going to talk about the 2 different ways to do this. So if I make the decision that I want to pre-assign these cards to the students, so right now I'm assigning cards students, the first thing I'm going to do is put my student names in here. Now hopefully you have some type of roster saved with an Excel or just a regular delimited file that you can go ahead and copy and paste in here. And you can copy and paste the entire roster.
So Excel will copy and paste?
Yeah, you can copy and paste actually the entire thing. It doesn't have to be even one student at a time.
Sure.
Now, unfortunately for me, I don't have a roster, so I'm just going to go ahead and manually type out 3 student names. So there's my 3 students. And I've made a decision that I want to go ahead and pre-assign these students a response card. So the first person I have on my list is Chris Goman. And I just picked up a card. To assign Chris a card, I'm going to turn that card over to the back. And immediately below the barcode is going to be that device ID. So the device ID on this card that I have in front of me is 2B0E5A. So if this was a real list, Chris Goman has now just been assigned this card. And actually all this is case sensitive. I didn't realize that it didn't have cap locks on, so I better fix that. It's also important to note that it's always going to be letters A through J, and it's always going to be numbers 0 through 9. You will never, ever have a letter O. So I just assigned Chris this card. What this means is when Chris comes into my room and I'm going to use this participant list, he must pick up this exact card. If he picks up a different card, his responses are going to be attributed to a different student. I would do the same thing for each student that I have in this list. Pick up a different card and assign them a different one via the device ID. Alan and everybody else, do we have any questions on the first way to create a participant list by pre-assigning the cards?
No.
All right. Now we have a second way. The second way involves still going through those 5 steps involved in the list wizard, but now this time I'm not going to put anything in ahead of time for the device ID. I'm going to keep this column 100% blank. I'm still putting in all my student names though. I'm going to move down to the lower right hand corner, click done, and now my list is saved. So let's get back to the situation and when we're ready to run this. Step number 4 is selecting our participant list. So this is what I'll do. To select the participant list, in the upper right hand corner I have a drop down menu. Any list that I've ever created is going to be located here. You can see I got a whole bunch of them. So I know the list that we just created is Economics 101. So I click it. Now this list is engaged to use with this presentation. Now, Ellen, if I pre-assign these cards for the device ID, I'm ready to run my PowerPoint. But I didn't do that, though. I kept that column for device ID blank. So now I have an additional step before I begin the PowerPoint. That is to click on the Participant tab again and to select the Real-Time Registration tool. This now brings up my participant list. I need to open up the registration tool by clicking on the Open Close tab in the upper right-hand corner. Now what's going to happen is the students are going to find where they're located in the list and click on the corresponding button. For instance, if my name is Rob McMillan, I can see I'm number 3. Therefore, I'm clicking button number 3 on my response card. If my name is Chris Goman, I'm clicking button number 1 on my response card. So on and so forth. Now, if I have more than 10 students in this participant list, after 15 seconds, it's going to rotate to the second 10. It's still going to be listed as 1 through 9 and 0, though, because that's how the cards are laid out. There's no such thing as an 11, 12, or 13. If we need to pause that every 15 seconds, this does turn into a pause tab down at the bottom middle. We can advance to a screen that's after this or go back to a previous with the tabs to the left and to the right. The reason we want to use the real-time registration tool is if we don't have access to the response cards ahead of time, therefore we can't pre-assign them, or we don't want to go through what is sometimes a tedious process of typing out each one of those device IDs. This allows students to pick up whatever card they want, but before we begin the presentation, they register the card to their name. There's 2 ways in which individuals will use this real-time registration. The first way they'll use it is a mechanism to go ahead and permanently assign the cards. So I may say to my students, okay, you just went through the real-time registration tool. Take a look at that card you have. This is going to be the same card that you would always use for any other presentation we would ever do. So I just use this as a mechanism to assign the cards. The other way to use this real-time registration tool is each class period, they would pick up a different card. And we would go through the same process of accessing the real-time registration tool, and they would just register a different card to their name and override the information that's in here. Once everybody has registered their card, we X out of it. It's going to ask us do we want to save the changes, and we say yes. Now we're ready to run the presentation. Alan, do you guys have any questions on that real-time registration tool?
That's awesome.
It's a nice option. It definitely gives you some possibilities of how to assign the cards, and it really just all depends on what you want to do. If you want to pre-assign, that's cool. If you don't want to pre-assign and let them pick up whatever card they want, then that's an option for you as well. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, what's the whole point of doing this participant list? Well, what we're trying to accomplish is that when we're done with the presentation and we go into our report screen, notice how we have all of these individual reports. I can do answer detail, response detail, score detail, and I got a whole number of other things. Okay, so if I want to see how Rob McMillan answered every question, if I want to see how Chris Goman answered every question, I want a percentage on right or wrong, and I want to be able to actually give him that total. I can do that when I generate those individual reports. I can even generate reports with each individual on their own page. That way I can go ahead, and if I have 30 students, I have 30 pieces of paper, and each person has their score, has all the questions on it, whether or not they got it right or wrong. So this truly can be a nice assessment tool. Okay, so I know that we got a little bit of time left, not much, but I do want to go ahead and transition over and just give you a brief little introduction to what Turning Point Anywhere is all about. But before I do that, Alan, do you guys have any other questions on creating, running presentations, or constructing and loading these participant lists within Turning Point?
I don't think so. As we start going with this, then we'll be able to add more and do more with it once we get comfortable with it. So that's good.